A 6-year-old girl is begging for coins on the sidewalk in front of a music school when she witnesses a scene that makes her heart race. A suspicious man forcefully carries away a 4-year-old boy dressed in an elegant suit. She immediately recognizes the child. It's the son of the kind millionaire who occasionally gives her some coins. With her survival instincts sharpened by life on the streets, she grabs a rusty knife from a trash can and follows the man into a dark alley, whispering with a trembling voice, "Let him go." What happens next changes her life forever. Tuesday afternoon's sun cast long shadows on the sidewalk as 6-year-old Sophia extended her small, dirty hand once more. Her brown eyes, too large for her thin face, observed each passerby with the intensity of someone who had learned to read people like an expert weather forecaster reads the sky. At 6, she already knew how to distinguish those who might offer a coin from those who would pretend not to see her. "Please, sir, just a little change," she murmured to a man in a suit who hurried past, not even lowering his gaze. Sophia wasn't surprised. She had learned that disappointment was a luxury she couldn't afford. The familiar roar of cars on the avenue blended with the sound of children playing in the courtyard of the music school across the street. It was a world she observed through the fences, like a distant film of a life she could never have. Children emerged from there with instruments in hand and smiles on their faces, always accompanied by parents picking them up in gleaming cars. Sophia adjusted her tattered dress, a hand-me-down from some donation that had reached the makeshift shelter where she lived with her grandmother. The fabric, once blue, now showed faded tones that told a story of countless washes, but she always kept it clean, no matter how hard it was. Dignity was one of the few things she still possessed. That's when she saw him. Miguel, the 4-year-old boy who always wore elegant clothes and had the sweetest smile she'd ever known. He was leaving the piano school, carrying a small satchel, his blonde hair gleaming in the sun. Sophia knew the boy well because his father, Mr. Eduardo, was one of the only adults who would stop to talk to her, who always gave her a few coins and sometimes a sandwich. "Dad said you like music," Miguel had once told her, extending a lollipop. "I like it too. Maybe someday you can hear me play the piano." That memory warmed Sophia's heart whenever the days were harder. There was something in the kindness of that family that awakened dreams she tried to keep buried. Dreams of having a real home, a family waiting for her for dinner, a father picking her up from school. Miguel stood on the sidewalk, apparently waiting for his father to arrive. He swayed his small satchel and hummed a melody he must have learned in class. Sophia smiled watching him. Even from a distance, the boy's joy was contagious. But then something changed. A tall man, dressed in dark clothes, approached Miguel. Sophia frowned. She knew all the adults who usually picked up children from that school, and this man was definitely not one of them. There was something in his posture, in the way he looked around, that made Sophia's instincts flare. "Come with me, kid," she heard the man say, though his voice was low. "Your dad sent me to pick you up." Miguel stopped swaying his satchel and looked at the man with confusion. "But Dad said he was picking me up today. He always picks me up." "He changed his mind," the man replied, and Sophia noticed the impatience in his voice. "Let's go, now." Sophia's heart began to pound. Something was very wrong. She had seen Mr. Eduardo that very morning, and he had told her he was looking forward to picking Miguel up after piano class. He would never send a stranger. The man grabbed Miguel by the arm, harder than he should have. The boy began to protest, but the man pulled him toward a dark alley between two buildings. Sophia saw the panic in Miguel's eyes and felt something explode in her chest. She couldn't stand there watching. Her eyes quickly searched for something, anything that could help. A nearby dumpster caught her attention. With quick movements, she rummaged inside it until she found a rusty knife. It wasn't much, but it was what she had. "Let him go!" Sophia shouted, running toward the alley, the knife trembling in her small hand. Her voice came out stronger than she expected, charged with a courage she didn't even know she possessed. The man spun around abruptly upon hearing Sophia's voice, his small, dark eyes fixing on the girl approaching with the knife in her hand. For an instant, he seemed surprised to see such a small child confronting him, but then his face contorted into an expression of irritation and contempt. "Get out of here, kid," he growled, tightening his grip on Miguel's arm. "This is none of your business." But Sophia didn't back down. Her bare feet stepped firmly on the dirty alley ground, and she raised the rusty knife with both small hands. The cold metal weighed more than she'd imagined, and she felt the rough rust against her palms, but she didn't let that intimidate her. "I said, let him go," she repeated, her voice trembling not from fear, but from a fury she had never felt before. "He's my friend." Miguel, tears streaming down his face, looked at Sophia with a mixture of relief and terror. "Sophia, help!" he cried, trying to break free from the man's grip. The kidnapper looked from Sophia to Miguel, seemingly processing the information that they knew each other. His expression became even more cruel. "Oh, really? Then both of you can come with me," he said, abruptly letting go of Miguel. The boy fell to his knees, sobbing, and Sophia felt a wave of despair wash over her. Without a second thought, she threw the knife at the man, but her small, trembling hands couldn't give enough force to the throw. The knife clattered to the ground, inches from the kidnapper's feet. "Idiot!" The man laughed cruelly, picking up the knife from the ground. "Think you can scare me with this junk?" Sophia ran to stand in front of Miguel, spreading her arms as if she could shield him with her own body. "Don't hurt him," she cried. "You can do whatever you want with me, but don't hurt Miguel." The man approached, holding the knife with a sinister smile. How touching, 2 kids for the price of 1. He stopped a few feet from them, and Sophia could smell the unpleasant odor of cigarette and alcohol on his breath. "You're coming with me without making a sound, or it'll be worse for both of you." Sophia held Miguel's hand, who clung to her tattered skirt. She could feel the boy trembling behind her, and that only made her determination grow. No matter what happened to her, she wouldn't let them harm Miguel. "Help!" Sophia screamed with all the strength of her lungs, her voice echoing through the alley walls. "Help! They're taking Miguel!" The man cursed and moved toward them, but Sophia kept screaming, louder and louder. "Police! Help! Kidnapping!" "Shut up!" the man snarled, raising his hand as if to hit her, but at that moment, voices approached the alley entrance. The man stopped, looking nervously behind him. Sophia took advantage of the distraction to pick Miguel up, even though he was almost her size, and ran to the darkest corner of the alley. "This way," she whispered to Miguel, pointing to an opening between 2 large dumpsters. "Stay quiet." They squeezed into the tight space, and Sophia placed her hand over Miguel's mouth to muffle his sobs. She could hear the man pacing back and forth, apparently deciding whether to flee or continue looking for them. "Or couldn't have gone far," he muttered to himself. "Damn brat." Sophia closed her eyes and prayed to all the saints her grandmother had taught her. She didn't have much to believe in life, but at that moment, she needed to believe that someone, somewhere, was looking out for them. The voices at the alley entrance grew louder, and Sophia heard footsteps approaching. The man cursed again, and she heard his footsteps quickly retreating, likely fleeing through the opposite exit of the alley. "Miguel, Miguel, where are you?" Sophia recognized the voice immediately. It was Mr. Eduardo, Miguel's father. Her heart pounded with both relief and terror. How would she explain what had happened? How could she make him understand that she had tried to help, not cause trouble? "Dad!" Miguel shouted, emerging from the hiding spot and running toward his father's voice. Sophia stayed where she was, still hidden between the dumpsters. Maybe it would be better to disappear, to go back to the streets where she belonged. But then she heard Miguel shouting, "Dad, Sophia, save me! A bad man tried to take me!" She knew she couldn't hide forever. Slowly, Sophia emerged from her hiding place, preparing herself to face whatever came next. Eduardo appeared at the alley entrance, his face pale with worry. Upon seeing Miguel run toward him, he knelt and opened his arms, receiving his son in a desperate embrace. But when his eyes met Sofia, still partially hidden between the dumpsters, his expression changed completely. "What did you do to my son?" Eduardo asked, his voice full of suspicion and anger. He stood up quickly, placing Miguel behind him, as if shielding the boy from Sofia. "Dad, no!" Miguel cried, trying to get out from behind his father. "She helped me. An ugly man tried to take me and Sofia showed up." Sofia took a step back, her back touching the cold alley wall. She knew that look. It was the same look she received from most adults when they saw her panhandling on the street. Distrust, fear, repulsion. Nothing she hadn't seen before. I just wanted to help," Sofia whispered, her voice almost inaudible. "I saw a man taking Miguel and he was crying." "Dad, listen to her," Miguel insisted, tugging his father's shirt. She screamed for help and scared the bad man away. She even threw a knife at him. Eduardo looked around the alley, noticing the rusty knife on the ground and signs of a struggle. Slowly, his expression began to change. "What man? What did he look like?" Sofia swallowed hard, trying to find the right words. "Tall, dark clothes. He said you sent him to pick up Miguel. But I knew it wasn't true because you always pick him up." "I would never send anyone to pick up my son," Eduardo said, his voice softening. You really protected him." "She saved me, Dad." Miguel ran to Sofia and took her hand. She was very brave. She screamed really loud to scare the bad man. Eduardo watched the scene before him. His son and a 6-year-old girl who lived on the streets, dirty and in torn clothes, being defended by Miguel with a passion he rarely saw. Something in his chest tightened. "Sofia," he said, approaching slowly. "Are you hurt?" Sofia shook her head, but Eduardo could see small scratches on her arms and a bloodstain on her knee. "It's nothing," she murmured, trying to hide her injuries. "Come here," Eduardo asked, kneeling to her height. "Let me see." Sofia hesitated. She wasn't used to kindness, especially from adults. But there was something in Mr. Eduardo's voice that made her trust him. Slowly, she approached. Eduardo examined the injuries carefully. "You need to clean this," he said softly. "You were very brave, Sofia. Braver than most adults would be." The words hit Sofia like a punch to the stomach. No one had ever told her she was brave. Usually, people saw her as a problem, a nuisance. Tears began to form in her eyes, but she held them back tightly. "Dad, can Sofia have dinner with us tonight?" Miguel asked, still holding the girl's hand. "She must be hungry." Eduardo looked at Sofia, who immediately shook her head. "No need, Mr. Eduardo. I have to go back home, to where I live." "Where do you live, Sofia?" Eduardo asked gently. Sofia lowered her eyes, embarrassed. "Under the 15th Street Bridge. With Grandma?" Eduardo felt something break inside him. "You live under a bridge? It's just temporary," Sofia lied, lifting her chin proudly. "Until Grandma gets better. She's a little sick." Miguel looked at his father with pleading eyes. "Dad, can she stay with us today? Please." Eduardo was torn. He wanted to help Sofia, but he also needed to better understand what had happened. "Sofia, you need to come with me so we can talk to the police about what happened. They need to know about this man." "Police?" Sofia took a step back, panic visible in her eyes. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You didn't do anything wrong," Eduardo assured her. "You're a hero, but you need to tell them what you saw so they can catch this man before he harms other children." Sofia looked at Miguel, who smiled encouragingly at her. "I'll go with you," the boy said. "It won't be scary." After a long pause, Sofia nodded. "Okay, but then I need to go back to Grandma. She'll worry." Eduardo stood up, extending his hand to Sofia. "Of course, but first, let's take care of those injuries." As they left the alley, Eduardo couldn't stop thinking about the extraordinary courage of that small girl. She had risked her own life to save his son, expecting nothing in return. And now, Even scared, she was willing to help catch the kidnapper. "Sophia," he said as they walked, "thank you. Thank you for saving my son." Sophia merely nodded, but inside she felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time. For the first time in her life, someone was thanking her for her existence, instead of wishing she would disappear. The police station was a place Sophia had learned to avoid during her years on the streets. The smell of disinfectant mixed with stale coffee and the constant ringing of telephones created an atmosphere that made her nervous. She stayed close to Miguel, who held her hand tightly, as if he could transmit courage through his touch. "You were very brave," said the detective, a middle-aged man with graying hair and kind eyes. "Without you, we might never have found Miguel." Sophia shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "I just did what anyone would do," she murmured, avoiding the officer's gaze. "That's not true," Eduardo interjected, sitting beside her. "So many adults wouldn't have the courage you had. You saved my son." Mr. Eduardo's words made her feel strange things in her chest, a mixture of pride and fear, as if she didn't deserve such compliments. On the street, Sophia had learned that when things seemed too good to be true, there was usually a hidden catch. "Can you describe the man again?" the detective asked, preparing to write. Sophia closed her eyes, forcing herself to remember the details. He was tall, taller than Mr. Eduardo. He had black, messy hair. He wore a dark jacket and smelled of cigarettes. Oh, and he had a small scar on his left hand. "A scar?" the detective asked, interested. "You noticed that?" "When he grabbed Miguel, I saw it," Sophia explained. "It looked like an old burn." Eduardo looked at her with admiration. "You have an incredible memory for details." "On the street, you learn to notice everything," Sophia replied simply. "You never know when information might be important." The detective finished writing and leaned forward. "Sophia, you've given us very valuable information. I'll have more officers patrolling the school area, and we'll investigate if there are other similar cases." When they left the police station, Eduardo stopped on the sidewalk and turned to Sophia. "I'd like to give you something as thanks. Money, clothes, anything you need." Sophia shook her head vigorously. "No need, Mr. Eduardo. I didn't help Miguel expecting anything in return." "But you need things," Eduardo insisted. "Food, clothes, medicine for your grandmother." "We make do," Sophia replied, lifting her chin proudly. "Always have." Miguel tugged his father's shirt. "Dad, can she at least have dinner with us? She must be hungry." Sophia felt her stomach rumble, but shook her head. "I need to go back to Grandma. She'll worry if I'm late." Eduardo realized that pressing wouldn't help. There was something in the girl's dignity that impressed him and, at the same time, broke his heart. "At least let me drive you to your grandmother. It's dangerous to walk alone after what happened." Sophia hesitated, but eventually agreed. During the drive, she looked out the window, watching the world pass by. It was the first time she had ridden in such a nice car, but she tried not to show her astonishment. "Sophia," Eduardo said, breaking the silence, "do you go to school?" "I did," she replied, "but when Grandma got sick, I had to stop to take care of her and work." "Work?" Eduardo asked, surprised. "You're 6 years old." "Panhandling," Sophia explained. "It's not real work, I know, but it's what I can do." Eduardo felt his throat tighten. "And your parents?" "They died when I was little," Sophia said without emotion. "Grandma raised me ever since." When they arrived at the bridge, Eduardo felt the impact of reality. Sophia's home was a makeshift structure made of cardboard and plastic tarps, hidden among the bridge's pillars. The smell of dampness and sewage was strong, and he could see an elderly woman lying on a thin mattress. "Grandma!" Sophia cried, running to the woman. "I'm back!" Sophia's grandmother opened her eyes with difficulty. She looked very frail, and Eduardo realized she was genuinely sick. "Where were you, child? I was worried." "I helped a friend," Sophia explained, kissing her grandmother's forehead. "Everything's fine." Eduardo approached respectfully. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Maria," the woman replied, trying to sit up. "Who are you, sir?" "Eduardo. Sophia saved my son today." Mrs. Maria looked at Sophia with pride. "She's a special girl, always helps those in need." "Grandma, don't say that," Sophia murmured, embarrassed. Eduardo looked around the makeshift shelter, feeling his chest tighten. "Mrs. Maria, you need medical care. I can help." "We don't need charity," Mrs. Maria interrupted, with dignity. "We appreciate the offer, but we manage." Eduardo realized where Sophia had inherited her pride. "It's not charity, it's gratitude. Sophia saved my son's life." "Grandma," Sophia said softly, "let him help, just a little." Mrs. Maria looked at her granddaughter and sighed. "All right, but we don't want to become dependent." When Eduardo finally said goodbye, promising to return the next day, he couldn't get the image of Sophia caring for her sick grandmother in that terrible place out of his mind. A 6-year-old child, alone in the world, but with more dignity and courage than many adults he knew. Miguel, who had been quiet during the visit, held his father's hand on the way back. "Dad, Sophia is so brave, isn't she?" "Yes, son," Eduardo replied, already knowing that that girl had fundamentally changed something in their lives. "She's the bravest person I know." The next morning, Sophia woke to the sound of footsteps near the shelter. She got up silently, trying not to wake her grandmother, and peeked through a crack in the tarp. A man walked slowly around the bridge pillars, clearly searching for something. When he turned, Sophia felt her blood run cold. It was the kidnapper. She ducked down quickly, her heart pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. The man continued walking, apparently having not found what he was looking for, but Sophia knew he would return. There was something in his movements, in the way he observed every corner, that terrified her. "Grandma," she whispered, gently touching the elderly woman's shoulder. "You need to wake up." Mrs. Maria opened her eyes with difficulty, her heavy breathing echoing in the small space. "What is it, child?" "The man from yesterday, he was here this morning," Sophia explained, trying to keep her voice calm so as not to scare her grandmother. "I think he's looking for me." Worry clouded Mrs. Maria's face. "Are you sure?" Sophia nodded. During her years living on the streets, she had developed a keen instinct for danger. She knew how to recognize when someone was a threat, and that man definitely was. "Let's get out of here for today," Mrs. Maria decided, making an effort to sit up. "Can you help me get to the church?" Sophia helped her grandmother stand, worried about the weakness she noticed in her movements. Mrs. Maria had worsened overnight, and Sophia knew she needed urgent medical care. They left the shelter carrying only the essentials in a plastic bag. Sophia looked around nervously, but saw no signs of the man. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. At the church, Father John received them kindly. He was an elderly man who had known Sophia since she was even younger, always offering a warm meal and a safe place to sleep when needed. "Mrs. Maria is worse," he observed, after examining the elderly woman. "She needs to see a doctor." "I know," Sophia sighed, "but we don't have money for a doctor." "There's the public health clinic," Father John suggested. "I can accompany you." Sophia was about to answer when she heard a familiar voice. "Sophia, are you here?" She turned and saw Eduardo entering the church with Miguel. The boy ran toward her with a radiant smile. "I knew I'd find you," Miguel said, hugging Sophia. "And Dad said we were going to look for you." Eduardo approached, his expression growing concerned when he saw Mrs. Maria. "Did something happen?" Sophia hesitated, but decided to tell the truth. "The man from yesterday, he showed up near our shelter this morning. I think he's looking for me." Eduardo's face hardened. "Are you sure it was him?" "Yes," Sophia replied firmly. "I don't forget faces." Eduardo knelt to her height. "Sophia, you and your grandmother cannot stay on the streets. It's too dangerous." "We don't have anywhere else," Sophia said, lowering her eyes. "Yes, you do," Eduardo replied. Come stay at my house until we figure this out." Sophia immediately shook her head. "We can't accept that, Mr. Eduardo. It's too much kindness." "It's not kindness," Eduardo insisted. "It's safety. This man might come back, and you're vulnerable on the streets." Mrs. Maria, who had listened to the conversation, held Sophia's hand. "Child, maybe it's best we accept, just for a few days." "But Grandma," Sophia began. "Sophia," Eduardo interrupted gently, "let me repay what you did for Miguel. Let me protect you both, as you protected us." Father John approached. "Sophia, sometimes accepting help is also an act of courage, and Mrs. Maria really needs care." Sophia looked at Miguel, who watched her with hope in her eyes. "You'll like our house," he said. "It has a big garden and the cook makes the best chocolate cake in the world." After much hesitation, Sophia finally nodded. "Just for a few days," she said, "until Grandma gets better and the man leaves." Eduardo smiled. "Perfect. I'll get the car." As Eduardo left, Father John approached Sophia. "You're doing the right thing, my child. Sometimes God sends us angels in disguise." Sophia looked at Miguel, who was excitedly telling Mrs. Maria about their house. Maybe the priest was right. Maybe, after so long, something good was finally happening in her life. But as they waited for Eduardo to return, Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that she was about to enter a world where she didn't belong. And even scarier, she was afraid that once she tasted what it was like to have a real family, she would never be able to go back to the life she knew. When Eduardo returned with the car, Sophia helped her grandmother inside, trying to ignore the fear growing in her chest. She had spent her entire life learning not to depend on anyone. Now, for the first time, she was about to discover what it was like to trust someone. Eduardo's mansion looked like a palace to Sophia's eyes. The electronic gate opened, revealing an immense garden with colorful flowers and a fountain in the center. Sophia held Mrs. Maria's hand tighter, feeling small and out of place in that world of wealth. "It's very beautiful," Mrs. Maria whispered, impressed. "Wait until you see inside," Miguel said, excited. "It has a staircase like in the movies." Eduardo parked the car in front of the house and helped Mrs. Maria out. Sophia observed every detail of the imposing facade, the large windows with elegant curtains, the perfectly manicured garden. It was as if they had stepped into a fairy tale. "Oh, welcome to our home," Eduardo said, smiling. "Make yourselves at home." A middle-aged woman came to meet them. She was well-dressed, but there was something in her expression that made Sophia instinctively shrink. "Eduardo," the woman said, her voice sharp, "who are these people?" "Carmen, these are Sophia and her grandmother, Mrs. Maria," Eduardo introduced. "They'll be staying with us for a few days." Carmen looked Sophia up and down, her disdain barely disguised. "Eduardo, can I speak with you privately?" Sophia felt her cheeks burn. She knew that look, that tone. It was the same one she received from many people on the streets, as if she was something dirty that needed to be removed. "Carmen, not now," Eduardo said firmly. "Let's show our guests their rooms." Miguel took Sophia's hand. "Come on, Sophia. I'll show you where you'll sleep." They ascended the marble staircase, and Sophia tried not to show how impressed she was. Soft carpets, paintings on the walls, glittering chandeliers. It was a world completely different from hers. "This will be your room," Eduardo said, opening the door to a spacious chamber. "And Mrs. Maria can stay in the room next door." Sophia entered slowly. The bed was larger than the entire space where she and her grandmother slept under the bridge. There was a window overlooking the garden, a dark wooden dresser, and even its own bathroom. "It's too much," Sophia murmured. "Too beautiful." "It's yours," Miguel said, "for as long as you want to stay." Sophia looked at Eduardo, who was watching her reaction carefully. "Thank you, Mr. Eduardo, but this is too much. We can sleep in the kitchen or—" "Absolutely not," Eduardo interrupted. "You are our honored guests." A maid appeared at the door. "Mr. Eduardo, I've prepared a bath for the elderly lady and clean clothes for both of them. Sophia stiffened. "Our clothes are fine." "Of course they are," Eduardo said gently. "But perhaps you'd like to freshen up after the difficult morning you've had." Mrs. Maria touched Sophia's arm. "Accept it, child. It's good to get properly clean." Reluctantly, Sophia agreed. When she was alone in the room, she sat on the edge of the enormous bed and looked around. Everything there cost more money than she saw in months of panhandling. How could she be there? A soft knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. Miguel entered carrying some books. "I brought some stories for you," he said. "Dad always reads to me before bed. Do you like stories?" Sophia nodded. In fact, she loved it when Mrs. Maria told old stories, but it had been a long time since her grandmother had the strength for it. "I can teach you to read better too," Miguel offered, "if you want." "I know how to read," Sophia defended herself. "Grandma taught me." "I know you do," Miguel said quickly. "I just thought maybe you'd like to read new books." At that moment, loud voices came from downstairs. Sophia and Miguel exchanged glances and, curious, approached the top of the stairs to listen. "Eduardo, have you lost your mind?" It was Carmen's voice. "They're bringing two strangers into our house, and street people at that." "Carmen, this girl saved Miguel's life," Eduardo replied, his voice tense. "So what? That doesn't mean we have to adopt them. They could be dangerous, they could steal, they could have diseases." Sophia felt tears sting her eyes. Miguel held her hand, whispering, "Don't listen to her. Dad won't let her kick you out." "You didn't see how she sacrificed herself for Miguel," Eduardo continued. "But she's a special child." "Special?" Carmen laughed disdainfully. "Eduardo, you're being naive. People like them always have ulterior motives. She probably planned this whole thing to get close to our family." "That's ridiculous," Eduardo countered. "Sophia is a child too smart for her own good," Carmen insisted. "Mark my words, Eduardo, this girl will bring trouble to our family." Sophia couldn't listen anymore. She ran to the room and closed the door, finally letting the tears fall. Maybe Carmen was right. Maybe she didn't deserve to be there. Maybe it would be better to take her grandmother and go back to the streets before she caused more problems. But then she thought of Mrs. Maria, so weak and sick, sleeping in a comfortable bed for the first time in years. She thought of Miguel, who looked at her as if she were a hero. And she thought of Eduardo, who had believed in her when everyone else doubted. Maybe it was worth trying to stay, at least for a few days. Maybe, for the first time in her life, she deserved to experience what it was like to have a real family. A week passed in the Santos mansion, and Sophia was beginning to get used to the routine. Every morning, Miguel would wake her up to have breakfast together, and they would spend the afternoons playing in the garden or reading books in the library. Mrs. Maria was recovering well with the medical care Eduardo had provided, and Sophia felt something she hadn't known in a long time. Peace. That Thursday morning, Sophia woke early and decided to explore the house. She had memorized most of the rooms, but there were still some places she didn't know. Silently descending the stairs, she heard voices coming from Eduardo's office. The door was ajar, and she recognized Carmen's voice. "You need to understand the gravity of the situation," said a male voice Sophia didn't recognize. "If that girl saw anything..." Sophia moved closer, her heart beginning to race. There was something in the tension of those voices that put her on alert. "She's just a child," Carmen replied, but her voice sounded nervous. She couldn't have understood anything. "A very observant child," the man retorted. "Ricardo told me she gave impressive details to the police. Details that could compromise us." Sophia felt her blood run cold. "Ricardo? Was that the kidnapper's name? And how did Carmen know him?" "What are you suggesting?" Carmen asked. "That perhaps it's time for her and the grandmother to go back to where they came from?" The man replied coldly. "Before they become a bigger problem." Sophia stepped away from the door, her heart pounding. She needed to process what she had heard. Carmen knew the kidnapper. Were they planning something against her and her grandmother? She ran up to Mrs. Maria's room and found her awake, reading a book Eduardo had brought. "Grandma," Sophia whispered. closing the door behind her. "I need to tell you something." Mrs. Maria noticed her granddaughter's frightened expression. "What is it, child?" Sophia told her everything she had heard, the words tumbling out. Mrs. Maria listened in silence, her expression growing increasingly serious. "Are you sure of what you heard?" her grandmother asked. "Yes," Sophia confirmed. "Carmen knows the man who tried to take Miguel, and they're planning something against us." Mrs. Maria sighed heavily. "I knew this was too good to be true." "What do we do, Grandma?" Before Mrs. Maria could answer, someone knocked on the door. "Sophia? Are you in there?" It was Miguel's voice. Sophia opened the door, trying to act normal. "Hi, Miguel. Dad wants to talk to you," the boy said. "He's in the office." Sophia felt a chill. Did they know she had overheard the conversation? "Now? Yep. He said it's important." Sophia looked at Mrs. Maria, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "I'll be right there," she said to Miguel. On the way to the office, Sophia tried to think of a strategy. Should she confront Eduardo with what she had discovered? Or would it be better to pretend she knew nothing? When she entered the office, Eduardo was alone, going through some papers. He smiled when he saw her, but Sophia noticed the smile didn't reach his eyes. "Sophia, have a seat," he said, indicating a chair. "I want to talk to you about something." Sophia sat down, her hands sweating. "What is it, Mr. Eduardo?" "I've been thinking about your situation," Eduardo began, his voice careful, "and talking to some acquaintances about the best options for you and Mrs. Maria." "What kind of options?" Sophia asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Well, there's a very good orphanage in the next town over, a place where children like you receive education, proper nutrition, medical care." Sophia felt the world spin. "Orphanage? It's temporary," Eduardo said quickly, "just until we find a permanent family for you, and Mrs. Maria would be well cared for in a nursing home." "You want to get rid of us?" Sophia said, her voice coming out stronger than she intended. Eduardo seemed surprised. "That's not it, Sophia. I'm thinking about what's best for you." "You're lying," Sophia accused, getting up from the chair. "I know about Carmen and Ricardo." Eduardo's expression changed completely. "What do you know about Ricardo?" Sophia realized she had made a mistake. She knew the kidnapper's name, but Eduardo had never mentioned that name in front of her. I overheard you talking." Eduardo stood up slowly, his expression growing somber. "Sophia, you shouldn't have heard that conversation." "Why does Carmen know the man who tried to kidnap Miguel?" Sophia asked, taking a step back. "It's complicated," Eduardo said, approaching her. "Too complicated for a child to understand." Sophia ran to the door, but Eduardo was faster. He held her arm gently but firmly. "Sophia, sit down. Let's talk about this like adults." But Sophia didn't want to talk. Her survival instincts, dormant during that week of comfort, returned with full force. She needed to get out of there. She needed to protect her grandmother. She needed to find a way to escape before it was too late. "Please," she whispered, "don't hurt Grandma. She didn't do anything wrong." Eduardo looked at her with an expression Sophia couldn't decipher. "No one's going to hurt you, Sophia. But I need you to understand that sometimes adults make difficult decisions to protect the people they love." Eduardo released Sophia's arm and sighed deeply, running his hands through his hair. He sat back down behind the desk, looking suddenly older and more tired. "Sophia, you have a right to know the truth," he said finally. "Sit down, please. I won't hurt you." Sophia hesitated, but something in Eduardo's voice made her believe him. She sat on the edge of the chair, ready to flee if necessary. "Carmen is my sister," Eduardo began. "She's always had money problems, always wanted more than I could give. A few months ago, she got involved with dangerous people." "Ricardo?" Sophia asked. Eduardo nodded. "Ricardo is part of a group that kidnaps children from wealthy families for ransom. Carmen provided information about our routine, about Miguel, in exchange for money." Sophia felt nauseous. "She helped them try to kidnap Miguel." Yes, Eduardo admitted, his voice full of pain. My own sister betrayed my son for money, and now she wants us gone because I can tell the police, Sofia understood. Exactly, Eduardo confirmed. But Sofia, you need to understand, I don't agree with Carmen. When I found out what she had done, I wanted to turn her into the police immediately. Sofia watched him intently. Oh, why didn't you? Because she's my sister, Eduardo said, his voice broken. And because I'm afraid of what Ricardo and his accomplices might do to us if she's arrested. They know our house, our routine. So, you're going to send us away to protect her? Sofia asked, feeling the familiar pain of rejection. No, Eduardo said firmly. I would never do that to you. You saved Miguel, you saved our family. I would never abandon you. Sofia wanted to believe him, but she'd spent too much time on the streets to trust easily. So what's going to happen? Eduardo stood up and went to the window. I'm trying to find a way to protect all of you. You, Mrs. Maria, Miguel, without putting anyone in danger. At that moment, the door burst open and Carmen entered, followed by a man Sofia recognized immediately, Ricardo, the kidnapper. Well, Ricardo said, a cruel smile on his face. The little hero who messed up our plans. Sofia jumped to her feet, her heart pounding. Eduardo immediately placed himself between her and Ricardo. What are you doing here? Eduardo asked, his voice tense. Solving a problem, Carmen replied coldly. Eduardo, you had your chance to deal with the situation. Now we'll deal with it. Carmen, they're a child and an elderly woman, Eduardo protested. Leave them alone. Ricardo laughed. A child who can put us all in jail. I can't allow that. Sofia looked around, searching for an escape route. The door was blocked by Ricardo and Carmen, but there was a side door that led to the garden. What do you want? Eduardo asked. Simple, Ricardo said. The girl comes with us. We'll take her far away from here, where she can't cause trouble. What about Grandma? Sofia asked, finding the courage to speak. And the old woman can stay, Carmen said with disdain. She's dying anyway. Anger exploded inside Sofia. Don't talk about my grandma like that. Sofia, be quiet, Eduardo murmured, but she couldn't contain herself. You're a horrible person, Sofia shouted at Carmen. Mr. Eduardo is good, Miguel is good, but you're evil. You betrayed your own family. Carmen took a threatening step toward Sofia. You don't know anything, brat. Yes, I do, Sofia retorted. I know you sold Miguel for money. I know you have no heart. Ricardo grabbed Carmen's arm. Enough talk. Let's take the girl and get this over with. You're not taking anyone, said a firm voice from the doorway. It was Miguel, his eyes red from crying. I heard everything. Miguel, go back to your room, Eduardo ordered. No, Dad, Miguel said, entering the room. I won't let them take Sofia. Ricardo looked irritated at the boy. Or another little problem to solve. It was then that Sofia noticed Miguel was holding something behind his back. When he brought his hands forward, she saw it was Eduardo's phone, with the call already connected. Hello, police, Miguel said loud enough for everyone to hear. I need help. There are bad guys in my house wanting to take my friend. Ricardo and Carmen exchanged glances, panic in their eyes. They had been caught off guard by a 4-year-old. You brat! Ricardo shouted, lunging toward Miguel. But Sofia was faster. She ran and threw herself in front of Miguel, protecting him once again. Don't touch him! Eduardo took advantage of the confusion to move. He grabbed Ricardo by the arm, and the two began to struggle. Carmen tried to grab Miguel's phone, but the boy ran behind the sofa. The police are coming, Miguel shouted. They told me to stay on the line. Sofia knew this was her chance. She ran to the side door and shouted, Grandma, Grandma, come down fast. The sound of sirens began to echo in the distance, growing louder and louder. Ricardo looked around desperately and then pushed Eduardo, running toward the door. This isn't over, he shouted at Sofia before disappearing. Carmen followed him, but stopped at the door to look at Eduardo. You'll regret this, brother. When the police arrived, they found Sofia and Miguel embracing. Eduardo comforting Mrs. Maria and a family that, despite everything, had become more united than ever. In the 3 days following the house invasion, the atmosphere at the Santos mansion changed completely. Police officers patrolled the garden, security cameras were installed in every corner, and Eduardo hired private security guards to protect the family. Sofia felt as if she were living in a gilded cage. "They still haven't managed to arrest Ricardo or Carmen," Eduardo told the detective in charge of the case, while Sofia pretended to read a book in the next room. "I'm worried about the girls' safety." "I understand your concern, Mr. Santos," the detective replied, "but we believe they've fled the city. Even so, we'll maintain protection." Sofia closed the book, unable to concentrate. Since the invasion, she couldn't stop thinking about Ricardo and Carmen. Where were they? What were they planning? And more importantly, how long could she and her grandmother stay at Eduardo's house? "Sofia?" Mrs. Maria called from the top of the stairs. "Can you come here, please?" Sofia ran up and found her grandmother sitting on the bed, looking better than in weeks. The medical care and good food had done wonders for her health. "Sit here with me," Mrs. Maria asked, patting the mattress beside her. "I need to talk to you about something important." Sofia sat down, realizing from her grandmother's expression that it was serious. "Child, have you noticed how Mr. Eduardo has been treating us?" Mrs. Maria asked. "He's been very good," Sofia replied. "Why, Grandma?" "This morning he came to talk to me," Mrs. Maria said, her voice soft. "He made a proposition." Sofia felt her stomach tighten. What kind of proposition?" "He wants to officially adopt us," Mrs. Maria said, observing her granddaughter's reaction. "He wants us to truly be part of his family." Sofia was silent for a long moment, processing the information. "Adopt. Forever. Forever," Mrs. Maria confirmed. "He said you saved Miguel not once, but twice. He said he can't imagine the family without us." Tears began to form in Sofia's eyes. "But Grandma, what if he changes his mind? What if one day he gets tired of us?" Mrs. Maria held her granddaughter's face in her hands. "Sofia, my dear, sometimes in life we need to have the courage to accept the love offered to us. You've spent so much time protecting your heart that you've forgotten what it's like to let someone take care of you." "I'm scared," Sofia admitted, the tears finally falling. "I'm scared to believe this is real, and then find out it's not." "I'm scared too," Mrs. Maria confessed. "But do you know what gives me courage? Seeing how Miguel looks at you, how Mr. Eduardo talks about you. They really love us, Sofia." Sofia hugged her grandmother, feeling for the first time that perhaps she could let her guard down and trust. "What do you think we should do?" "I think we should accept," Mrs. Maria said. "I think we deserve to be happy." At that moment, Miguel appeared at the door. "Can I come in?" "Of course, dear," Mrs. Maria said. Miguel ran to the bed and climbed up, sitting between Sofia and his grandmother. "Dad told me you're going to be our real family," he said, beaming. "Does that mean Sofia's going to be my sister?" Sofia looked at the boy she had saved and who, in turn, had saved her too. "You want me to be your sister?" "More than anything in the world," Miguel replied, hugging her. "I always wanted a brave sister like you." Eduardo appeared at the door, smiling at seeing the three together on the bed. "Can I join this family conversation?" "Dad," Miguel cried, "Sofia said she's going to be my sister." Eduardo looked at Sofia with affection. "Is that true, Sofia? You accept being part of our family?" Sofia looked around at Mrs. Maria, who smiled with tears in her eyes, at Miguel, who watched her with adoration, and at Eduardo, who looked at her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. I accept," she said, her voice coming out as a whisper. Eduardo approached and hugged her. "Welcome to the Santos family, my daughter." But at the exact moment, Sofia allowed herself to feel complete happiness. The sound of breaking glass echoed from downstairs. Shouts from security guards mixed with the sound of struggle, and everyone in the family knew immediately that Ricardo had returned. "Stay here," Eduardo ordered, running out of the room. But Sophia knew she couldn't stay put. Ricardo had come back for her, and she wouldn't let her new family suffer because of her. While Mrs. Maria held Miguel, Sophia ran after Eduardo, determined to face her destiny once and for all. "Sophia, come back here," Mrs. Maria cried. But Sophia had already descended the stairs, ready for the final confrontation that would determine if her new family would survive intact. Sophia reached the living room and found a scene of chaos. 2 security guards were on the floor, apparently unconscious but breathing. Eduardo stood in the center of the room, his hands raised, while Ricardo pointed a gun at him. Carmen was beside the kidnapper, holding a bag. "Where's the girl?" Ricardo asked. His voice filled with rage. "She's not here," Eduardo lied. "I sent her and her grandmother away after what happened." "Leah!" Carmen shouted. "I know they're here." It was then that Ricardo saw Sophia at the top of the stairs. A cruel smile spread across his face. "Ah, look who decided to show up. The little hero." Sophia descended slowly, each step calculated. "Leave them alone, Ricardo. You have a problem with me." "Sophia, go back upstairs," Eduardo ordered, but she kept coming down. "No," Sophia said firmly. "I've hidden enough. It's time to end this." Ricardo laughed. "How brave. Just like that day in the alley. But this time, you don't have a rusty knife to threaten me with." Sophia reached the bottom of the stairs, stopping a few feet from Ricardo. "I don't need a knife. I have something much more powerful." "Oh, really?" Ricardo scoffed. "And what would that be?" "The truth," Sophia replied. "And people who care about me?" Carmen rolled her eyes. "How pathetic, Ricardo. Let's just get this over with. Grab the girl and let's go." "Wait a minute," Ricardo said, seeming amused. "I want to hear what our little philosopher has to say." Sophia took a deep breath, remembering all the lessons life on the streets had taught her. "Do you know why I saved Miguel that day?" "Because you're an idiot," Ricardo suggested. "Because I know what it's like to have no one," Sophia said, her voice growing stronger. "I know what it's like to be alone and scared. And I wasn't going to let that happen to an innocent child." Eduardo watched Sophia with admiration and terror, knowing she was risking everything to protect his family. "How touching," Carmen said sarcastically. "But that doesn't change the fact that you can put us in jail." "You put yourselves in jail when you chose to hurt children," Sophia retorted. "I just told the truth." Ricardo took a step toward Sophia. "Enough talk. You're coming with us, whether you want to or not." "No," Sophia said simply. "What do you mean, no?" Ricardo asked, surprised. "I said no," Sophia repeated, crossing her arms. "I'm not going anywhere with you." Ricardo pointed the gun at Sophia. "You don't have a choice, brat." It was then that Sophia smiled. "Actually, I do." At that moment, she whistled loudly, a sharp sound that echoed through the house. Immediately, the sound of sirens began to approach, growing louder and louder. "What did you do?" Ricardo asked, panic visible in his eyes. "Before I came down, I pressed the emergency button Mr. Eduardo showed me," Sophia explained calmly. "The police were already on their way, but now they know it's urgent." Carmen and Ricardo exchanged glances, realizing they had fallen into a trap. Ricardo moved the gun nervously between Sophia and Eduardo. "You're not as smart as you think," he said. "And I can still do a lot of damage before the police get here." "You can," Sophia agreed, "but then you'll prove you're exactly the kind of cowardly person I imagined you were." "Cowardly," Ricardo repeated, offended. "Yes," Sophia said, taking a step toward him. "What kind of grown man threatens children? What kind of person hides behind a gun to feel powerful?" "Sophia, stop," Eduardo whispered, seeing Ricardo becoming increasingly agitated. "No, Mr. Eduardo," Sophia said, keeping her eyes fixed on Ricardo. "He needs to hear this. He needs to understand that I'm not afraid of him anymore." The sirens were getting closer. Ricardo looked around desperately, realizing his options were running out. "Last chance?" he said to Sophia. "Come with me now, or what?" Sophia interrupted. "You'll shoot a child in front of the police. You'll spend the rest of your life in jail because of a 6-year-old girl you couldn't intimidate." Ricardo hesitated, and in that hesitation, Sophia saw her chance. "I think deep down you know you lost. A kid from the streets was smarter than you." The sound of cars stopping in front of the house echoed through the room. Police voices could be heard outside. "It's over," Sophia said softly. "It's time to face the consequences." Ricardo looked at the gun in his hands, then at Sophia, and finally at the blue and red lights flashing through the windows. Slowly, he lowered the weapon and placed it on the floor. "Police! Open the door!" Eduardo ran to open it, and in seconds the room was filled with officers. Ricardo and Carmen were arrested without resistance, and Sophia could finally breathe a sigh of relief. "Are you okay?" Eduardo asked, kneeling beside her. Sophia nodded, but suddenly began to tremble. The adrenaline was fading, and she realized how truly scared she had been. Eduardo hugged her tightly. "You were incredible, my daughter, braver than any adult I know." A week after Ricardo and Carmen's arrest, the Santos home finally returned to normal. The security cameras remained, but the guards had left, and the sense of danger that had loomed over the family had disappeared. Sophia was sitting in the garden, watching Miguel play with a new toy car, when Eduardo approached. "May I sit?" he asked, indicating the bench beside her. Sophia nodded, moving to make space. "How are things at the company?" She had learned to ask these polite questions, part of her adaptation to the new world she lived in. "Better," Eduardo replied, "but it's not about work I want to talk about, it's about you." Sophia looked at him, curious. "About me?" "The lawyer came today," Eduardo said. "The adoption papers are ready. If you still want to." "Of course." Sophia's heart quickened. During that turbulent week, they had spoken little about the adoption, focused on resolving the situation with Ricardo and Carmen. "I still want to," she said quickly. "If you still want to, too." Eduardo smiled. "Sophia, after everything we've been through, after seeing how you protected our family, how can you still doubt that I want you as my daughter?" "It's just," Sophia hesitated, searching for the right words. "It's hard to believe this is real, that someone could truly want me." Eduardo turned completely to her. "Sophia, I'm going to tell you a secret. When my wife passed away 3 years ago, I thought I would never be happy again. Miguel was devastated. I was lost, and our house felt too empty." Sophia listened in silence, seeing the emotion in Eduardo's eyes. "Then you appeared in our lives," he continued. "A brave girl who risked everything to save my son. And suddenly our house had laughter again. Miguel started smiling again, and I remembered how good it feels to have a family." Tears began to form in Sophia's eyes. "But I'm not like you. I came from the streets. I don't know how to use a fork properly. I don't read well." "Sophia," Eduardo interrupted gently, "you saved my son. Twice. You faced grown men to protect our family. You have more courage and kindness in your pinky finger than many people have in their whole bodies." "You really think that?" "I know it," Eduardo said with conviction. "And you know what else? Mrs. Maria told me you always took care of her, always shared the little you had with her, always put her well-being before your own. That's what defines a person, Sophia. Not where they come from, but how they treat the people they love." Sophia wiped away her tears with the back of her hand. "What if I can't be a good daughter? What if I disappoint you?" Eduardo chuckled softly. "Sophia, do you think Miguel worries about those things when he plays with you? Do you think Mrs. Maria worries about that when she sees how loving you are? You're already part of this family. The papers will just make official what is already real." At that moment, Miguel ran up to them. "My dad, Sophia, come see what I built." They stood up and followed Miguel to a corner of the garden where he had made an elaborate construction with building blocks. "It's our house," Miguel explained excitedly. "Look, this is Dad's room, this is mine, This is Grandma Maria's, and this is Sophia's. Sophia looked at the construction and saw that Miguel had drawn 4 stick figures next to the house. One was tall, Eduardo. One was small with light hair, Miguel. One was small with dark hair, her, and one had a cane, Mrs. Maria. "We're a real family," Miguel said, smiling, "and families stay together forever." Eduardo knelt beside the two of them. "Miguel, what do you think about having a special ceremony to make it official that Sophia and Mrs. Maria are part of our family?" "Like a wedding?" Miguel asked. "Similar," Eduardo laughed. "It would be the adoption ceremony, where everyone knows you're real siblings." Miguel jumped with joy. "Can I wear my fancy outfit, the same one I wore at Uncle Paul's wedding?" "Of course," Eduardo replied. "And Sophia can choose a pretty dress too." Sophia looked at the 2 most important men in her life. "Thank you," she said, her voice coming out as a whisper. "Thank you for giving me a family." Eduardo hugged her. "Thank you for saving ours." That night, after dinner, Sophia went up to Mrs. Maria's room. She found her sitting in the armchair near the window, looking out at the illuminated garden. "Grandma," Sophia said, approaching, "Mr. Eduardo wants to make the adoption official next week." Mrs. Maria smiled. "And are you happy?" "I am," Sophia admitted, "but I'm also scared." "Scared of what, my dear?" Sophia sat on the arm of the chair. "Scared of forgetting who I am, scared that the Sophia from the streets will disappear." Mrs. Maria held her granddaughter's hand. "Sophia, you will never stop being who you are. Your courage, your kindness, your strength, all of that will stay with you. The only thing that will change is that now you'll have a family that recognizes and values those qualities." "Are you sure?" "I am," Mrs. Maria said. "And you know why? Because the Sophia who saved Miguel is the same Sophia who took care of me all these years. She's the same Sophia who faced Ricardo to protect her new family. You don't change who you are, Sophia. You just get stronger." Sophia hugged her grandmother, feeling a peace she hadn't known in a long time. For the first time in her life, she didn't have to worry about the next day, didn't have to plan where to sleep or what to eat. For the first time, she could simply be a 6-year-old child with a family who loved her. The day of the adoption hearing arrived with a clear, blue, cloudless sky. Sophia woke up early. Her stomach was in knots with nervousness and anticipation. Eduardo had explained that it would be a simple process. They would go to the courthouse, speak with the judge, and then it would be official. But for Sophia, it felt like the most important day of her life. "Sophia, dear," Mrs. Maria called from the door. "Are you ready to get dressed?" Sophia nodded, getting out of bed. Eduardo had bought a special dress for the occasion, light blue with white lace details. It was the prettiest dress Sophia had ever seen, let alone worn. As Mrs. Maria helped her get ready, Sophia looked at herself in the mirror. The girl looking back was very different from the one who panhandled in front of the music school just a few weeks ago. Her hair was clean and combed. Her skin had gained a healthier glow, and her eyes had a sparkle she hadn't seen in a long time. "You look beautiful," Mrs. Maria said, adjusting a lock of Sophia's hair. "Your mother would be very proud." Sophia turned to her grandmother. "Grandma, do you think Mom and Dad would be happy that I have a new family?" Mrs. Maria smiled with tears in her eyes. "My dear, your parents loved you more than anything. They wanted you to be happy and safe. I'm sure they're celebrating this day in heaven." Coming down for breakfast, Sophia found Eduardo and Miguel already elegantly dressed. Miguel ran to her when he saw her. "Sophia, you look like a princess," he exclaimed, twirling around her. Eduardo approached, emotional. "You look beautiful, my daughter." The word daughter still made Sophia's heart leap. It was something she was getting used to hearing, but it still felt magical. "Mr. Eduardo," Sophia said shyly, "can I ask a question?" "Of course, and Sophia, after today, you don't have to call me Mr. Eduardo anymore. You can call me Dad, if you like." Sophia felt her cheeks flush. "Dad, it's strange to say that." "You'll get used to it," Eduardo chuckled. "What was your question?" "After today, will I really be your daughter, like Miguel?" Eduardo knelt to her height. "Sophia, you are already my daughter. You've been my daughter since the day you saved Miguel. Today, we're just making official what my heart already knows." On the way to the courthouse, Sophia held Miguel's hand tightly. He had insisted on sitting beside her in the car, promising he wouldn't let her be nervous. "It's not scary," Miguel said, sensing his sister's tension. "The judge is really nice. Dad said he'll just ask a few questions and then we'll celebrate." "What kind of questions?" Sophia wanted to know. "Like if you really want to be part of our family," Miguel explained. "And I'm going to tell him you're the best sister in the world." Eduardo looked in the rearview mirror and smiled, seeing the two of them together. "Miguel, are you going to stay quiet during the hearing, remember?" "I know, Dad. But if the judge asks about Sophia, can I speak?" "We'll see," Eduardo replied. In the courtroom, they sat in a smaller, more welcoming room than Sophia had imagined. The judge was an elderly man with a kind demeanor who smiled when he saw them enter. "So this is Sophia," the judge said, consulting some papers. "I've heard a lot about you, young lady." Sophia shrank a little in her chair. "About me?" "Yes," the judge continued. "About how you saved Miguel, about your courage. I have police reports here and from the social worker who visited you." Eduardo held Sophia's hand, conveying reassurance. "Sophia," the judge said gently, "do you understand what it means to be adopted?" Sophia nodded. "It means I'll be Dad Eduardo's daughter and Miguel's sister forever." The judge smiled. "Exactly. And is that what you want?" Sophia looked around the room. Mrs. Maria was sitting behind them, smiling encouragingly. Miguel held her other hand, swinging his legs with anticipation. Eduardo looked at her with so much love that she felt her chest warm. "Yes," Sophia said, her voice growing stronger. "It's what I want most in the world." "And why?" the judge asked. Sophia thought for a moment. "Because they make me feel important, because Miguel looks at me like I'm special, because Dad Eduardo protects me just like he protects Miguel, and because for the first time in my life, I know I have a place to come home to." The judge nodded, clearly touched by the answer. "Eduardo, are you sure you want to take responsibility for Sophia and Mrs. Maria?" "Absolutely," Eduardo replied without hesitation. "They are already my family. Sophia is my daughter, Mrs. Maria is my mother-in-law, and I can't imagine our life without them." Miguel couldn't contain himself. "Judge, can I speak?" The judge chuckled. "Of course. Miguel, Sophia is the bravest person I know," Miguel said quickly. "She saved me from a bad man, and she always takes care of everyone, and she makes the best sandcastles at the park." Everyone laughed, and Sophia felt the tension ease. "Well," said the judge, picking up a pen, "it seems we have a family here that found each other in a very special way." He signed some papers and then looked at Sophia with a warm smile. "Sophia Santos," he said solemnly. "Welcome officially to the Santos family." Sophia felt tears of joy stream down her face. Miguel shouted with happiness. Eduardo hugged her tightly, and Mrs. Maria applauded from her chair. "Now we're a real family forever," Miguel said, jumping. Sophia looked around at her favorite people in the whole world and knew that, finally, she was home. 3 weeks after the official adoption, Sophia woke up on a Saturday morning to the sound of Miguel laughing in the garden. She stretched in the bed that was now officially hers and smiled, remembering she didn't have to worry about finding a place to sleep. This was her room, her house, her family. Wearing the robe Eduardo had bought for her, blue with golden stars, Sophia went down to the kitchen and found Mrs. Maria preparing pancakes with the help of the cook. "Good morning, Grandma," Sophia said, kissing the elderly woman's cheek. "Good morning, my dear," Mrs. Maria replied, looking younger and healthier every day. Did you sleep well? Very well, Sophia confirmed. It was true. Ever since Ricardo and Carmen had been arrested, she could sleep through the night without nightmares. Eduardo entered the kitchen holding some papers and smiling. Sophia, I have a surprise for you. A surprise? Sophia asked, curious. Remember you told me you missed school? Eduardo said, sitting beside her. Sophia nodded. It was true. She had interrupted her studies to take care of Mrs. Maria, but she had always dreamed of going back to learning. I talked to the principal of Miguel's school, Eduardo continued. They have a special class for children who need to catch up on their studies. Would you like to try? Sophia's eyes filled with tears of joy. Really? I can go to school? Of course, Eduardo laughed. You're my daughter. All the children in this family go to school. Miguel ran through the kitchen door. Sophia, you're going to my school. We can go together in the car. Sophia hugged her brother. The word brother had already become natural in her thoughts. We can eat lunch together too. And I can show you to all my friends, Miguel said excitedly. I'll tell them you're the bravest sister in the world. Later that day, while Sophia played in the garden with Miguel, Eduardo received a call from the detective in charge of Ricardo and Carmen's case. Sophia, he called after hanging up. Can you come here, please? Sophia approached, noticing that Eduardo was serious. Did something happen? The detective called, Eduardo explained. Ricardo confessed everything. He and Carmen are being charged with attempted kidnapping, home invasion, and involvement in a larger crime network. They'll go to jail, Sophia asked. And for a long time, Eduardo confirmed. And Sophia, there's something else. Ricardo confessed that they were planning to kidnap other children. Your courage in reporting them saved many other families. Sophia processed the information. So, it's really all over. It is, Eduardo said, hugging her. You can live without fear now. We all can. That night, during dinner, Eduardo made a special announcement. Family, he said, standing up with a glass of grape juice in his hand. I want to make a toast. Miguel and Sophia raised their glasses too, while Mrs. Maria smiled from the head of the table. A month ago, we were an incomplete family, Eduardo began. Miguel and I were still learning to live without Mom. You two were struggling to survive on your own. Sophia felt her throat tighten with emotion. Then, Eduardo continued, something magical happened. Sophia, with her incredible courage, not only saved Miguel, but saved all of us. She taught us what it means to be a real family. Dad, Sophia murmured, tears starting to fall. Sophia, you taught me that family isn't just about blood, Eduardo said. It's about love, protection, sacrifice. It's about being willing to risk everything for those we love. And Mrs. Maria, you taught me that wisdom and dignity can exist anywhere. Mrs. Maria wiped her own eyes with a napkin. Miguel, Eduardo continued, looking at his son, you taught me that children see with their hearts, not with the prejudices of adults. You accepted Sophia as your sister from day one. Because she is my sister, Miguel said simply. Eduardo smiled. Exactly. So my toast is this, to the Santos family, who found each other in the most unlikely way and became stronger than I ever imagined possible. To the Santos family, Miguel and Sophia shouted together, clinking their glasses. To family, Mrs. Maria repeated softly. After dinner, Sophia helped Mrs. Maria go up to her room. Her grandmother had been getting tired more easily lately, but the doctors said it was normal for someone her age who had been through so much stress. Grandma, Sophia said, helping her sit on the bed, are you happy here? Happier than I ever thought I would be again, Mrs. Maria replied. And you, my dear? No more doubts? Sophia shook her head. No, for the first time in my life, I know exactly where I belong. Your parents would be very proud, Mrs. Maria said, stroking Sophia's hair. You've become an incredible young woman. You taught me everything, Sophia said, about dignity, about kindness, about never giving up. And now you have a whole family to keep learning with, Mrs. Maria smiled. Eduardo is a good man, Sophia. He will give you everything you deserve. That night, before going to sleep, Sophia looked out her bedroom window at the illuminated garden. She could see the alley between the buildings where everything had started. But now it didn't seem scary anymore. It just seemed like a place where a brave girl had found her destiny. She picked up a new notebook that Eduardo had bought for her and wrote, "My name is Sofia Santos. I am 7 years old. I have a dad who loves me, a brother who admires me, and a grandma who taught me to be strong. I'm no longer afraid of tomorrow because I know my family will be with me." Closing the notebook, Sophia lay down on the soft bed and closed her eyes, knowing that when she woke up, she would still be home. 1 year after that sunny Tuesday afternoon that changed everything, Sophia woke up on her 7th birthday to the sound of music coming from the garden. She quickly got up, curious, and ran to the window. Downstairs, Miguel was playing the piano outdoors. Eduardo had bought a portable digital piano as a surprise for her birthday. "Happy birthday, Sophia!" Miguel shouted when he saw her at the window. "Come down fast. There are surprises." Sophia ran downstairs, still in her pajamas, and found the whole family gathered in the garden. Mrs. Maria was sitting in a comfortable chair, stronger than she had been in years. Eduardo held a chocolate cake with colorful candles, and Miguel continued to play a soft melody on the piano. "Happy birthday, my daughter," Eduardo said, kissing Sophia's forehead. "How does it feel to be officially a 7-year-old? "Wonderful," Sophia replied, smiling. "Especially because I'm with you all." The first year as a Santos family had been full of discoveries. Sophia had adapted to school with surprising ease, demonstrating a sharp intelligence that her teachers constantly praised. Miguel had become her best friend and biggest defender, always telling everyone that his sister was a true hero. "Before you open the presents," Eduardo said, "I want to show you something." He guided Sophia to a corner of the garden that had been covered with a sheet. When he pulled back the fabric, he revealed a small bronze plaque affixed to a stone pedestal. Sophia read aloud, "In memory of courage, in this garden lives Sofia Santos, who taught us that the greatest heroes sometimes come in the smallest packages. With love, the Santos family." Tears of emotion streamed down Sophia's face. "Dad, it's beautiful." "Not as beautiful as my brave daughter," Eduardo replied, hugging her. "Open the presents now," Miguel begged, barely able to contain his excitement. The first gift was from Mrs. Maria, a delicate necklace with a heart-shaped pendant. "It was your mother's," her grandmother explained. "I saved it all these years to give to you when you were ready." Sophia held the necklace with reverence. "Thank you, Grandma. I'll wear it always." Miguel handed her his surprise, a storybook he had illustrated himself. "I wrote about us," he explained proudly, "and about how you saved me and how we became siblings." Eduardo presented the last gift, a small golden key. "It's the official house key," he said, "so you never forget that this is your home forever." After the special breakfast, they visited the alley where everything had begun. Sophia had asked to go there on her birthday, not out of painful nostalgia, but to show herself how much her life had changed. "This is where it all started," Sophia said, standing in the exact spot where she had confronted Ricardo a year earlier. "This is where you saved our family," Eduardo corrected. "Actually," Sophia said thoughtfully, "this is where you saved me too." Miguel took his sister's hand. "Sophia, do you still remember what it was like before you lived with us?" Sophia thought for a moment. "I remember, but it seems like a distant dream. Like it was someone else's life. Sometimes I'm afraid you'll want to go back," Miguel confessed. Sophia knelt to her brother's height. "Miguel, listen carefully. I will never, ever want to leave our family. You are my home, my heart, my whole life." That afternoon, they received special visitors for the birthday party. The detective who had worked on the case, some of the school's teachers, and even Father John from the church where Sophia and Mrs. Maria had taken refuge. "Sophia," the detective said during the party, "I wanted you to know that Ricardo and Carmen were sentenced to long prison terms. Furthermore, the information you provided helped dismantle an entire crime network. You saved many other families." Sophia nodded, satisfied to know that her courage had had a greater impact than she had imagined. When the party ended and the guests left, the family gathered in the living room. Miguel was sleepy in Eduardo's lap, Mrs. Maria was knitting in her favorite armchair, and Sophia was reading a new book on the rug. "Sophia," Eduardo said softly, "there's one more surprise." Sophia looked up, curious. "Next week, we're going to start piano lessons for you," he announced. "If you want, of course." "Piano?" Sophia's eyes widened. "Like Miguel, you always watch the children leaving the music school," Eduardo reminded her. "Oh, I thought you might like to try." Sophia jumped off the rug and ran to hug Eduardo. "Thank you, Dad. I really want to." "I'll teach you the first chords," Miguel offered, waking from his drowsiness. Later, as Sophia was getting ready for bed, she stopped in front of the bathroom mirror. The girl looking back was radiant, healthy, and most importantly, happy. Her eyes shone with the confidence of someone who knew she was loved unconditionally. Mrs. Maria appeared at the door. "May I come in?" "Of course, Grandma." Mrs. Maria sat on Sophia's bed. "I wanted to talk to you about something important." Sophia sat beside her grandmother, attentive. "You know I'm getting older," Mrs. Maria began gently, "and although I'm much better now, I know that one day I will pass on." "Grandma," Sophia began, but Mrs. Maria raised her hand. "Let me finish," she said with a smile. "And I want you to know that these last few months have been the happiest of my life. Seeing you with a real family, seeing you go to school, seeing you just being a child. That's all I ever wanted for you." Tears formed in Sophia's eyes. "You're not going anywhere, Grandma. When the time comes," Mrs. Maria continued, "I want you to remember that you are strong, brave, and deserving of all the love in the world. Eduardo and Miguel will take care of you, but you will also take care of them, because that's what families do." Sophia hugged her grandmother tightly. "I love you, Grandma. I love you too, my little warrior." That night, before going to sleep, Sophia opened the notebook where she now wrote every day. On the blank page, she wrote, "Today I turned 7. A year ago, I was a scared girl living under a bridge. Today, I am Sophia Santos, Dad's daughter, Miguel's sister, Grandma Maria's granddaughter. I have a home, a family, and a future full of possibilities. I learned that sometimes life takes us to places we never imagined. I learned that courage isn't about not being afraid, but about doing the right thing even when you are afraid. And I learned that family isn't just about where you're born, but about where you choose to belong. The alley where it all began doesn't scare me anymore. Now it's just the place where a small girl had enough courage to change the destiny of everyone she loved. Tomorrow I'm going to start piano lessons. Who knows? Maybe one day I'll play at the music school where I used to panhandle. Life is full of wonderful surprises when you have people who believe in you. Good night, dear diary. Tomorrow will be another incredible day in the Santos family." Sophia closed the notebook, kissed the necklace that had belonged to her mother, and lay down on the soft bed. Through the window, she could see the stars shining in the dark sky, and for the first time in her life, she knew with absolute certainty that tomorrow would be full of love, security, and endless possibilities. The brave girl who had saved a boy in an alley had found much more than she expected. She had found a family, a home, and above all, she had found herself,